If you'd like to tweet anything about today's session, feel free to use the hashtag TDChat. I'm Lisa Holden. I'm the Employer Communications Manager here at Glassdoor, and my job is really to engage with employers on communicating their brands and their brand identity across the social platform Glassdoor, but also giving them some insight into how to communicate their brands externally on other channels and really define their brand message. I'm here today with Colleen Robertson. She's the Digital Marketing Manager at Solemn Consulting. And I thought I'd give you a quick agenda. I'm going to run through the modern recruiting landscape and kind of talk about why social recruiting matters and why we're up here today. I'll go through a few key tips, the things that I think are important to really establishing your employer brand across your social recruiting channels. And I'll turn it over to Colleen to kind of give you a best of and really show you how it's done here. And if time permits at the end, we'll go through a Q&A. So first of all, I want to really explain the modern recruiting landscape here. The way that people look for jobs has changed, and it's changed in a lot of really key ways. So we know that consumers visit at least 3 websites before making just a purchase, anything from an electronic device to a pair of socks. Job seekers use on average 18 sources before applying for a job. So people aren't just going to career pages anymore or looking in the newspaper. People are taking advantage of all the information out there, and since the internet, that's a lot of information. We also know that they look at about 7 to 8 reviews before they make a decision about something, and this actually aligns with Glassdoor's own research. We found that people read about 6 reviews before they form an opinion of a company. So the way that people make decisions relies a lot more on the information available to them that simply wasn't available before. And we find this to be true in lots of different arenas. When you look at how people make purchases on Amazon, everyone's reading reviews before they make a final decision or make a final purchase. The same with Airbnb and travel and companies like TripAdvisor, or even as simple as getting in a cab. I read the star review. I look at the star review of my Lyft driver before I get in the car. And if it's true for those arenas, it couldn't be more true for Glassdoor and the arena of employment. So your job is where you spend most of your time. It's one of the most important decisions you make in your life, and the more information out there, the better decisions people can make. And so that brings me to why social recruiting really matters. As we've kind of established here, your candidates are really your consumers too. So any of this data that maps back to how consumers make decisions about the products and services they buy aligns very tightly with candidates and how they make decisions about where they want to work. So it brings us really to the question, why is social recruiting so powerful? And why do we need to engage in the social media arena in order to move the needle when it comes to recruiting? There are 3 main reasons that I think social recruiting really matters. One is it's cost effective. We know that we all have our own social channels, and those are free, but smaller organizations can get away with the free stuff too. So JobVite did a survey recently where they found that 33% of recruiters don't spend a thing on social recruiting, and 41% spend less than $1,000 a month. And so this is a very cost-effective way to showcase your brand and have honest and authentic conversations that aren't coming out of your marketing budget, aren't coming out of your recruiting budget. They're just part of the way you communicate now, and it doesn't have to be your entire budget to do that. Social recruiting also amplifies brand awareness. And what I mean by that is there's only so much you can put on your careers page. There's only so much you can put in your job ads. People are looking for a more holistic look at your organization, and these social networks, these social channels are a great way to have honest, authentic, and more casual conversations than you would have in traditional marketing speak that you would find on your website or something. This is a place to kind of show the quirks in your brand a little bit and give your company a personality that can be really valuable when someone's making a decision about where they want to spend truly most of their time. And finally, it drives candidate quality. And I'll get into a little more about what I mean by that. But in essence, as soon as you level the playing field and you have as much information as the candidate has, the candidate feels like he or she is coming into this conversation as informed as possible. Any candidate that feels like he or she has enough information to self-select out of the process actually increases the quality of your existing candidate pool, because the candidate takes themselves out, and then you're not wasting time on someone who wouldn't have ended up being a fit. So again, this platform where you can be extremely authentic actually improves your quality that you're getting at the end of the day in the door to have those interviews. So again, just to kind of amplify this, we know that 73% of recruiters have made successful hires through social media, and 59% of recruiters think candidates found through social networks are the highest quality. So this isn't something that I, Lisa Holden, the employer engagement manager at Glassdoor, thinks. These are the numbers by the surveys. So your peers are saying this is working. And this isn't just about recruiters. Job seekers want to hear everyone's perspective. And a data point that I find extremely compelling is that a PR agency called Edelman, that I have a lot of respect for, does a global survey where they try and understand what it takes for a consumer to experience trust with a brand. And what they found is that although friends and family are still the most trusted source at 72%, content provided by employees is the number 2 most trusted source of information about a company. And to me, this is really astounding, because it means if I'm up for a job, I'll probably have a conversation with someone like my mom, and we'll think about if that's the right job for me. But the next person I go to, the person that I trust second to my mother, is a stranger working in the job that I'm thinking about working for. So this is an extremely powerful takeaway for anyone sitting in a recruiting seat right now, thinking about how to fill those empty seats around you. Your employees, the people in the seats next to the empty seats, are the strongest brand ambassadors for you. They hold a tremendous amount of power when it comes to communicating what your company is truly like. So I would keep that in mind. And as you're doing this, and as you're fighting for resources to have the time to put forth a lot of energy on social recruiting, it's okay to go to your C-suite and really prove why this is so important. And 2 data points that speak to this nicely are from this same survey, and they found that 63% of consumers refuse to buy products and services from a company they do not trust, and no surprise, 80% choose to buy products from companies they trust. So if you are putting forth all of this effort across your social recruiting channels to engage with prospective talent and establish your employer voice and really do all of the things that establish trust, that the benefits of that trust actually have legs outside of the recruitment program. This is making your company more trustworthy, which, as you can see by these numbers, can actually increase your consumer base, which is huge. I mean, the stuff that we're doing here in recruiting, where recruiting kind of meets marketing, can affect your bottom line, which is extremely powerful. And I also want to point out here that I'm congratulating everyone on the line now, because you're doing something innovative to be thinking about social recruiting, and this is something where you really can't get ahead of your competition. So we actually surveyed folks, and we found that 33% of employers encourage employees to use social media to share news and information about their work or employer. So what that means is 1/3 of those we surveyed are doing it right. They're encouraging their employees, they're engaging their workforce, they're developing brand ambassadors, but 2/3 haven't gotten wind of this yet. And so if you're in a position where you're looking at your competition and seeing them kind of do social media but not doing it specifically for the candidates, you have an opportunity to really get ahead of the game here. And so I would encourage you to do that. So now I'll just run through a few tips that I think are really important when you're thinking about how to really develop a program around social recruiting and make this matter. And the first tip is to be authentic. I think we all know what it's like to see a robot tweet, and it's pretty painful. So, excuse me, I would encourage everyone who is developing a Twitter profile and a Facebook page specifically for candidates to think about ways to showcase what's truly going on at your organization. And yeah, showcase the good stuff, but also be real. Share news articles that are relevant. Engage with other people who have said they work at your organization. People who are publicly saying on their Twitter account, I work at Glassdoor and I love it. Tweet at that person. Have real conversations, and don't be afraid of that, because if you're just tweeting your available jobs over and over and over, you're really not engaging on this platform in a way that anyone can engage with. And again, just to recap, candidates want the real information, so don't be afraid of telling it like it is. Communicate your culture and values and show what makes you unique. Anything from a Bagel Wednesday to maybe there's a band of folks at your organization who play music together or something. Those are great things to share on these channels. And then the other recommendation I have is to share content from other providers, too. If you have a sister organization that's doing something interesting, engage with them on social and show the relationship you have between the organizations, which says a lot about your brand and your ability to connect. So here's a couple examples of things that we share from our own Glassdoor profile across our social channels. These are real photos and stories about things that are going on with us. Awards, thought leadership, maybe an interesting quote, anything to give your organization the same kind of personality you would bring to your own personal social channels. And so my next tip is to get leadership involved. And this is extremely important because we know that things like this trickle down from the top. If one person in the HR department sends an email out to your entire workforce and says, hey, please tweet about us, or don't be afraid of sharing what you like about working here, or a picture of your view from your desk, that means something, and that's helpful. It's a part of the process, but it's not as powerful as seeing the CFO do it. It's not as powerful as seeing your boss share, I'm so happy to be at work today, look at this sunset. So engaging leadership and getting your leaders involved in tweeting and engaging on social really sends a message to your workforce that this is okay. This is something that we want to see more of, and we encourage you to do it. So without leadership involvement, this feels a little less authentic. That's an important piece. And we know that 75% of U.S. respondents to a global social CEO survey believe that companies whose C-suite executives and leadership teams use social media to communicate are more trustworthy. So again, this maps back to the trust issue. And if you see leadership doing it, you're more likely to do it yourself. This is a great example from Spencer Raskoff. He's the CEO of Zillow and one of our favorite CEOs. He he uses Twitter as a great place to communicate with his workforce in a public arena. So, I mean, you can tell that Chris here really loves his job if he's tweeting a picture of his new baby wrapped literally in his company's logo. And Spencer, the CEO of this organization, really celebrates that and capitalizes on the opportunity not only to encourage his employee on the new arrival, but do it in a public arena where he says to everyone, I'm proud of my employees. I care about them and their personal accomplishments as well as professional, and I'm going to share this publicly with everyone I know. And this speaks volumes, first to engaging leadership, but second to being authentic. Also, don't forget to engage your brand ambassadors. And what I mean by this is, of course, your employees. So once you have that leadership team sort of on board with this and tweeting and sharing themselves, engage your employees to share content as well. Encourage people to post on Glassdoor and share on social networks like Facebook and Instagram. You could launch a photo contest. This is actually a picture of our CSM team when we did a photo contest and we asked for the best selfie, and the winners won a selfie stick. And no surprise, there's like 30 people in this selfie. These guys took away the top prize, and it was a great content play for us because we got all these awesome selfies of our employees in the workplace. But people had a lot of fun, and they really felt like they were doing their part in our social recruiting, and that was cool to see. You can also do things like create a unique hashtag so that people know that they're joining an ongoing flow of conversation, and make it easy. I mean, if people have to send their tweets to legal before they're approved to publish, you're going to have a pretty low engagement rate. So make sure you're not establishing too many rules here. And I know I sit in a communications seat. I know how terrifying it is to tell people to say whatever you want. But know that on social media, it's not always going to be perfectly on message, and that's part of the game. That's acceptable in this arena. It's truly what people expect. So with all of that, I would like to turn it over to Colleen Robertson, Digital Marketing Manager at Slalom Consulting, who can give you a little more insight into how this is done.
Thanks so much, Lisa. I just couldn't agree more. Your points are absolutely what we are seeing here at Slalom, and I'm going to speak really tactically about our program, and I welcome questions. So if people have questions, I think they can just chat them into the chat window, and we'll address them when we can. But thank you for that great tee-up. Here at Slalom, we have an employee brand advocacy program, and what that looks like at our company. And we are a moving target. We are growing rapidly. We are headquartered in Seattle, Washington, and now actually have 22 markets. We're opening new markets very rapidly. We have a large client list comprised in large part of Fortune 1000 companies. And we have many different markets out there posting content online. So a big part of what you'll hear me talk about today is letting go of the illusion of control and how challenging that is, but how rewarding it can be too. So if you want to follow Slalom to see what we're doing, our hashtag is I'm with Slalom, and those are our handles there at the bottom. And I wouldn't be much of an employee brand advocate if I didn't say a little bit about my personal brand. I am the digital media manager with Slalom. I've been here for about 2 years, and I'm hosting our voice on those social channels. I will tell you Glassdoor, and I was asked about Glassdoor in my final interview for this role. And Glassdoor is a key component of our employee brand advocacy program and a key part of our strategy for bringing our brand to life online. So thanks for having me today, actually. So before we go any further, I'm going to address something that Lisa brought up around where the brand of your organization exists online. So you might hear, if you're talking to someone who's in sales, you might hear talk about a sales funnel. If you're talking to someone who's in marketing, there might be targets or target marketing. If we're talking about UX or UI, or we're talking to leadership, we might hear about a client journey or a recruit journey. So I don't really care how you frame it up for yourself or how you have these conversations, but what you're talking about is how people encounter the brand. And what I'm particularly concerned with, and what social recruiting and being on social media in general is particularly concerned with, is where are those furthest outlying, and sometimes, a lot of the times, first points of contact with your brand. And that is important because that's the first impression, but also it's what brings people in toward the center of the brand. So when we think about, let's say we have an employee who has a LinkedIn profile, a post of theirs would be a great example of the furthest possible outreached representation of what the Slalom brand is. Whether they're actually talking about work that Slalom does in that post, or if they're just talking about something that they have interest in or knowledge about. I'll come to that in a minute. But essentially, that is the representation of the brand at its furthest extension. A tweet, certainly a review on Glassdoor is a great example. But we also use Glassdoor to post company updates. So that's something that we kind of control as a brand. We can post a company update to the Glassdoor platform and have a lot of people see it on that platform and also in their emails. So those channels are really what we're talking about when we talk about social recruiting and social employee brand advocacy. I also want to underscore that I don't want you to underestimate the power of the many. So Lisa made a great point about leaders and getting them engaged so that they can inspire their employees and really underscore the impact of the program and bring people's awareness to it. But I would really, and I absolutely agree with what you said about employees being important, because the employee is the large group of people that you have at your fingertips to activate and to inspire. And you may have great leaders, and they might have a big spotlight like the Zillow CEO, but probably they don't. And that means there's just a few of them, whereas you may have many, many, many employees that you can activate. So even if they only have a couple hundred connections on LinkedIn or a few followers on Twitter, do not underestimate the power of the many, is my advice to you. So I want to give you some examples of what employee brand advocacy looks like at Slalom. And this is going to start to give you a sense of how much you have to let go of the reins to have a really well-engaged program. And I'm going to talk a little bit more in a minute about the tools that we use and the tactics, but this is what it looks like from the outside. So what we've done is we've empowered our local markets to execute the brand in a semi-autonomous way. That means they can go out there and post their own stuff as Slalom Boston, and they have an Instagram handle and they have a Twitter handle, and I'm just using Boston as an example, but you can see we have Slalom LA and Slalom London and all sorts of different kind of employee-run, kind of grassroots local marketing efforts at play here. And this is a great example of some user-generated content that is posted by Slalom Boston. What I mean by user-generated content is they took that picture. It's an original picture. They didn't buy it off the internet or get it off of our website. It's absolutely something they just snapped with their phone and then tweeted it. And they tagged some of their colleagues there in the picture and used the branded hashtag I'm with Slalom. So this is a great example, but it's really not the furthest out point. There's an example here of our GM in Houston, Paul, posting a link to a story that we have hosted on our website. So the story that we have hosted on our website is more of a content marketing piece. It's about work we do with our clients, and that specific set of work is around helping large companies find their purpose. So here Paul is driving eyes to a piece of our content marketing, what we'd like to do for our clients. And he's mentioned our brand, and he's used our hashtag, which is great. We've got our GM, one of our GMs posting there. Now here we have a consultant, just one of our consultants, Steve, and he's sharing a link to a post that a colleague of his, Justin Distad, has posted on LinkedIn Pulse. So you can see this content is not driving to slalom.com. This content is, in fact, going away, maybe, from our website. It's going over to LinkedIn Pulse to read a story about why Justin likes working with slalom. So it's branded content, but it's out there in the wild a little further afield, and it's kind of one colleague promoting another colleague's thought leadership. Now here's our CTO, and our CTO, Steve, is posting thought leadership content about organizational design. And even though he mentions the brand, it's not actually content that lives on slalom.com, and I'll get into the technical details of why that short link has our brand in it. But just know that Steve here is just posting a thought leadership piece on organizational design. So he's way beyond what we're talking about as far as like that really pointed goal of driving traffic to site, which is one of the goals of social recruiting. Let's bring awareness to our brand. Let's get people into a place that we have some control over and we can communicate with them, get their information, etc. But Steve is way out there, building his own personal brand, his online brand persona around having insight into organizational design. And lastly, Lindsay here is posting a story that was in a Seattle newspaper about a sponsorship of a cyclist. And it has almost nothing to do with business consulting at all, but she's reposting that content that the Seattle PI posted about slalom sponsorship of this event, of this person. So that is also employee brand advocacy. It feels really far away from the brand, but if you think about it, someone who sees this might very well click through on that mention of slalom at the front of that tweet and then realize what it is we do, that we're located in Seattle, that we're engaged with our community. So that's a really positive employee brand advocate piece there. And I'm going to speak specifically about how this aligns to recruiting, but it starts to become evident that people build their brand around topics or areas of expertise, but also being an employee of your company. And when they share content that's related to that, even remotely related, they start to engage their networks. They start to engage their audience and build their credibility. So let's talk about this wild hair of a statistic. I love this one. It's companies that use social advocacy programs are 12% more profitable than companies who do not. And that's a great statistic to take to your leadership and advocate for building your program and dedicating resources to your program. The reason why companies that engage in employee brand advocacy and social advocacy are more profitable is because employees are more engaged. So in recent surveys, we've learned that the workforce is very disengaged, which means people aren't doing a full day's work. People aren't committing their full energies to the workplace. And even though it sounds like we're just asking people to go play around on Twitter, in fact, what they'll do is they'll be more connected to their colleagues, more connected to their areas of interest, and they'll start to develop their own thought leadership. People are more engaged at work and in the workplace, and they actually stay longer as well. Not only that, but what we've seen is that we are able to hire great people faster, the right people faster, and we've also built business on our social channels via thought leadership and sharing stories that we've delivered for clients. That has also brought deals in the door. So you can see that the small ripple of one tweet or one LinkedIn post can have astronomical impact across the whole organization, including the bottom line. So letting go of control. And there are always pitfalls. As we know, we're working with people, and people are wonderful and flawed, and isn't that great? So we're looking at a collection of posts here from Instagram using the hashtag #I'mWithSlalom, and I'm going to talk tactically about how we manage this, keeping I'm with Slalom content, well, it's like kosher, or we are fine with it being associated with our brand. But essentially what we've asked people to do is, profess their love, profess their alignment with slalom, and then take selfies and take pictures of work events and pictures of the brand. And it's working really well, actually, for us. We see people excited and engaged and enthusiastic, but we also hear that people find our brand more, and we see it in our statistics for our website. So here's another great one. I'm going to give a tactical example around this to illustrate this point, but when employees share content, it receives 5 to 10 times the amplification rate than brand-shared content. So, for example, Colleen posts something on LinkedIn, and I post something about a story that's about digital marketing and images and engagement, a technical story in my field. And Slalom, the brand, which I manage, and I'm also posting on LinkedIn, post something about the work that we delivered for Allstate Insurance with virtual reality hackathons, which we did recently, and it's a great little story. Well, even though that Allstate story is pretty darn good, Colleen's post, relative to the number of connections that I have, is going to get a better amplification rate. And that is because my content is varied and authentic. I'm a human. There are a lot of reasons for this. My network is people that I'm connected to, or connections of my connections, or we have a shared interest already. That's why we're connected. So there's this network that is self-fulfilling, kind of engaged with the content that I'm going to share. And the Slalom brand, which I work to have be very human and very authentic, is still a brand. So it's still a biased perspective. Colleen is going to post about many varieties of things, and I'm just going to post things that I think are compelling and interesting. The brand is compelled to post the brand message. So that's why employees' voices are so powerful. If you think about it, if you could activate 100 employees to share one of the stories that you had delivered to your clients or your customers in the last year on a social channel, their amplification rate and reach would far outweigh any brand post that you could bring to bear. So activating that group is a really, really high potential for reach and engagement. Now, that sounds dangerous. I know that sounds dangerous. Sometimes it feels dangerous. But what we're working to do continually is provide trainings internally. Immediately before this webinar, I was providing a training, and we provide those in person and also remote, and we also put up some guidelines. So I like to think of this as we're all going bowling, but here are the bumpers. There's not going to be any gutter balls. Don't even worry about it. And here are some of the bumpers. So one of them is this policy, and the policy is something that I make people aware of. It's on our shared intranet, and it's something I developed with legal and with HR, and it talks about kind of being authentic, but also being professional, and why we do some of the things we do online. So it provides as much transparency and visibility as we can into the hashtag #I'mWithSlalom, which is actually built around an FTC compliance, a Federal Trade Commission ruling around being clear around who you work for when you advocate for their services. But it kind of brings people all to the same page. And when I discover content that doesn't really align with this, I can, even if the person hasn't discovered it, I can point them to it and say, let's have a conversation around this piece that already exists that we've all agreed to based on your employment with Slalom. But not only do I want to provide rules, I'm the taskmaster, but I also want to provide some inspiration and some background and some resources. So if they want to dive deeper and learn more and jump on Twitter, even though they've only been using LinkedIn thus far, they can do it. So this is a page that I have up that is public, and it has a lot of links. I haven't reinvented the wheel. I've linked to a lot of resources that I trust and believe in, like Moz and HubSpot, and I've kind of provided 11 things you can do that you might want to know about our brand and social media. So that's something that I also send out a lot to people. And those are the two kind of guidelines that I really suggest any fledgling social recruiting, employee brand advocacy program put into place, are the kind of, let's put some guidelines and boundaries out here, and let's also put some inspiration and some where to go to learn more out here. So I just referenced getting started. And getting started involves advocating to leadership, finding time and resources, be they your own or a team's or someone else's, or hiring for that role, and articulating to leadership and making the case. But also, when you want to start to inspire employees and inspire leaders to post and share and get engaged and stay engaged, what that involves is defining the goals of your program and making sure that when you're going to go share that brand, that people are clear on what the brand is that they're going to share. Why would they want to do it? But also, what is it that they're saying? So what is on-brand and what is off-brand? And that can be relatively easy if you have a wealth of content marketing at your fingertips, or it can be quite challenging if you don't have a lot of resources dedicated to building like an online content marketing thought piece, or your website isn't very robust with deep branded content, POVs and white papers and all that stuff, blog posts from your employees. So kind of every company runs the gamut. Some have tons and tons of library of branded content, and some have barely any, just kind of like a contact tab. In which case, you'll want to look at your brand and think about how does our brand different from our competitors? What are our differentiators? And what does that look like on social media? What are the images that we're going to share and that we're not going to share? What are the words that we're going to use and we're not going to use? Would we ever, for example, a very specific decision that you'd want to make as a team or as an individual would be, do we use tone-based hashtags like TGIF or do we stay away from those? Or do we ever use technical hashtags like FinServ for financial services? Or do we stay away from that? And that is determined entirely by your audience. And when we think about recruiting and using hashtags, and you're empowering recruiters to represent the brand, well, there's some kind of very obvious ones that they'll use, like based around events that they're attending or career fairs that are happening or really specific industries. But really, how are we asking people to voice their own brand around the work that they do and what they're trying to do, but also how are we going to voice your brand? You know, how are you going to represent slalom, but also how are you going to ask Colleen to talk when she's talking about slalom? And we made a huge leap in our program recently, and that was by taking on a tool to help us do this. So the beta version of our employee brand advocacy program looked like an email, and it looked like an email that had suggested content by channel. So we were talking about announcements like, hey, we've been listed as a Glassdoor best places to work again, and then included the hashtag and the link to the story on our website. Or share this point of view on the art of marketing analytics with anyone that might be interested. Here's a LinkedIn post for you, here's a tweet for you, and here's a Facebook post for you. And here are the little bit.lys, the little short links that we're going to give to you to post on your social channels. So that was what V1 looked like, is sending an email to distribution lists. We were asking some of the markets to redistribute out, or we were asking our internal teams to distribute out as appropriate. But that was really the fledgling employee brand advocacy program. At the same time, we were training people on how if you engage with our brand online when you see it, you can help us achieve all of these goals. So if you're a recruiter or a sales executive and you see a post on LinkedIn, if you share it to your network, you'll be helping us reach more people. And those people will be more engaged with your content than they are with our content. So they will see it, they will comment, they will share, they will like. So the power that they hold is a really important piece to bring to bear. You want to let people know how powerful they are. And hopefully you can also let them know how powerful they are and the risks that they run when they use your brand and post things that aren't professional. And I'm not going to get into the weeds, but if we have someone who posts something that is affiliated with our brand that we don't think represents our brand well, we just reach directly to them. And that's one of the benefits of having a branded hashtag for your company, is you can really follow that content clearly and you can reach out really quickly. We don't see that happen very often. And the more trainings we provide, the more kind of inspiration but touch points we provide for those brand advocates, the less we see that content. So what V2 looks like for our employee brand advocacy program is this tool, which we call Slalom Social. There are a lot of employee brand advocacy tools out there, and because of our audiences, we are B2B, and because of our internal needs and our structure, we went with one from a company called Dynamic Signal, and their product is called Voice Storm. If you want to get started researching about the kind of marketplace out there, and there are quite a few solutions, and that's one of them that you could start looking at. I'm going to keep moving with this, but if you have questions, remember them and chat them, and we'll get to them at the end. So here's who I would recommend you start building your employee brand advocacy program with. Recruiters and sales execs and leaders are your front line. And it's pretty obvious. Those people are the people who are trying to build business, build brand awareness, and really get the word out about the roles that we want to fill, the work we want to do, and our brand in general. So those people are already really passionate about your brand. Those people are already talking about your brand. So just providing them with some tools and some language and some insights around how they can move the needle for your company is just going to light a fire under them. So that's a great way to start. Also, you'll have some people that are already talking about your brand. So find those people and say, hey, we're doing this over here. We'd love to have your power. We'd love to have you bring your power to bear over here. And maybe you have some knowledge you can share back with us. You already have employee brand advocates out there. You just might not even know. You might not have looked or discovered them. And then also, of course, you want to engage with people who are willing to engage on behalf of your brand or talk about the work you do or talk about the available roles. And so those are the sales execs, the leaders, and the recruiters. That's your baseline group, and the people in comms and marketing, of course, and then we'll kind of start to expand out from there. So think about and identify who those initial power users are going to be for your program and really get them engaged early on. We've talked a lot today about why, but essentially, I want you to help them understand why it's powerful for them to share. So help them understand that if they post online about topics that they're passionate about or interested in or knowledgeable about, they will help build their, what we call subject matter expertise. So they can establish a subject matter expertise on a topic and start to have opportunities like speaking on webinars or really being seen as a thought leader. I also do a lot of work around sharing with them how they can impact our company's success. So what are the stories that we've heard where a sales exec engages with us on LinkedIn and then one of their contacts sees the story and reads the story and reaches back to us and says, we want this work done for us. Let's share those success stories back so that people go, wow, I'm really powerful. My actions on this platform, even just liking a post on LinkedIn, can have a huge positive impact on the company that I work for. Also, it keeps them engaged, as we said before, but it helps them connect with their colleagues and continue learning and stay on top of industry trends and insights. And how? So I've addressed this a little bit already. In-person and remote trainings are key. You need to keep offering them. Even if your company isn't growing at a rapid rate, you just need to make sure that people who want to jump in are supported and people that have jumped in before are still on top of kind of why and what should be said and how they can make an impact. The user guide that I gave you an example of is more broad than what I'm talking about here. A user guide might be really specific to channel or it might be specific to a tool that you're offering internally. So I make it as self-service as possible. So this is a screenshot from a video that I created walking people through building their first tweet. So how do we share that knowledge internally in a way that people can consume in a self-driven way? And then we use that brand advocacy tool, and that is it's made it an incredibly powerful program for us. We had a group of power users that were sharing content on behalf of the brand when we started. We now have over 1,500 people using that tool. And for a company of 3,700, that's a pretty incredible percentage. People are consuming industry-related content. They are sharing stories into the tool platform and recommending it to their colleagues, and then they're sharing it out to their social platforms. And as I said really early on, it's not all slalom content. It's really content that they're interested in, that they are compelled by, that they think their network would be engaged in. It doesn't all drive back to the mothership. It helps them build their personal brand, but it also elevates the Slalom brand because that's someone who works for us, and aren't they brilliant? That's the kind of idea behind having employee brand advocates. And then what content? I just referred to this. Is it branded content? There's other content out there that helps them elevate their brand. You know, you might not share content from a competitor, but certainly content that is related to their field, that is cutting edge or breaking news, that's content that they should be talking about, sharing, consuming, and staying on top of. And then also just asking themselves, does it inspire them? Are they interested in it? Brett, a great example. How big of a deal is big data quality? Well, we do a lot of big data work, but I don't think this piece was posted on slalom.com. Oh, I'll address this short link now because I said I would, but effectively what we're using there is a branded bit.ly, and it's synced with our brand advocacy tool. So I'm of two minds about the benefits, the pros and the cons around this, but this content is not necessarily from slalom.com. It does kind of serve the purpose of that I'm with Slalom hashtag in some way, though, so I don't find it entirely unpalatable. And then what it looks like here is when we encourage our employees to be SMEs on social channels, this woman works for us and was highlighted. She was highlighting women of Tableau, so data visualization leaders who are women for Women's History Month, and she was interviewing different women. And so she works with Slalom. She had incredible engagement. None of this drives back to slalom.com, but the fact that she works for us is huge. It's huge for our partnership with Tableau. It's huge for our clients who use us for Tableau work, and it's also huge for the people that see that and they know that our brand has that pillar, that strength. So I want to talk specifically about feedback that I've gotten from recruiters on this brand advocacy tool. And this really underscores the point. I know there's a lot of text on this, but I think it's such a compelling piece. I want to highlight specifically Lindsay saying, I have been able to have conversations with potential consultants on the latest trends and news articles. A lot of my connections on Twitter and LinkedIn have reached out to chat more about specific posts I've shared. They really say they're not being seen as recruiters anymore. They're being seen as subject matter experts, and that's incredibly powerful and authentic when they want to have a conversation with someone, when they're doing some technical recruiting or they're recruiting for a specific industry, and they actually know what's happening in that industry. Imagine. Missy says, I've gained exposure with followers who express common interests. So that's the whole idea, right? Alana, it has helped me have deeper conversations quicker. So that's where the tool is moving the needle for us in talent acquisition, and it's been incredibly powerful. We've had multiple hires come through the tool, and we've only been using it for a few months. So to wrap up my portion of today's webinar, I just want to underscore the importance of measuring and reporting. So how do you test and refine your efforts? That depends on the KPIs, the key performance indicators that you set for your program. But if you are hoping to improve brand mentions on channels, or if you're looking to have people increase their own followers by 10%, or your branded handle by 15% by the end of Q3, be sure to test and set goals and refine those goals. And if you do not have visibility into the analytics behind your branded platforms like your Glassdoor page or your website, find a way to get access to that insight, because that insight will inform whether or not your program is being successful. And also then reporting back to the users. And our tool does this automatically, which is fantastic, and it's a great motivator, but finding a way to report back to people the impact that they're having, the way that they've helped you build business or get great hires. And lastly, how is traffic to site impacted? Do you see improvement? Do you see changes? Are the people that are coming to your website via these posts and via these social channels, are they engaged? Are you posting the right content out there that means that when they come to the website, they're reading more, they're expecting to find what they do find, or are they getting the website and bailing? Their exit rate, they're dropping off really quickly, they're bouncing out. So look at those numbers and let it inform the content that you're putting out there. If you get a bunch of people clicking on stuff and then they come to the website and they leave right away, then that's not potentially valuable. So you really want to set up expectations and then follow through in a consistent way so that your brand exists out in those extended places that is in a way that's consistent with the way that it exists on the internet or maybe even at a storefront. So if you have physical stores, you want to make sure that those brands all kind of have the same look and feel or the same personality, if you will. So you have a consistent brand, different engagement points, and people are going to get what they expect and feel a lot of like trust and relationship build and authenticity when they engage with you on these different channels. So that's all I have for today. I really appreciate having people listen, and I would love to answer any questions if there are any.
We do have one question from the panel. The question is, what are the benefits of the branded short link?
Oh, well, they're a few fold. So one of them is around tracking. Because we have that branded short link, Bitly gives us much more detailed tracking information. We know out in the wild where those links are being clicked, even if they're not driving back to slalom.com properties. So we can talk about out there around clicks and engagement, even if we're not controlling that. We can talk about how engaged our whole company is in the landscape. Having a short link is obviously a benefit if you're on a social channel. Fewer characters increases engagement, whether we're talking Twitter or LinkedIn. But having it be branded or not is a decision point, and it is a cost. It is a cost for us. So it's something to consider.
There are no other questions at this time. We have one more question in the panel. The question is, are there any recommendations if you have an employee engagement problem and people don't want to be advocates?
I'll take this first. Oh, go ahead, Lisa.
This is Lisa. I was going to add that if people don't want to be advocates, something must be wrong. And what I mean by that is if someone were to ask me what I think of my work, I would have a lot of positive things to say, and I would share them gladly. I have not always been in a job like that. There have been times where I haven't liked my job or I haven't liked my company, and I haven't wanted to be an advocate for it because I didn't feel good about where I was. And so if you're asking employees to be brand advocates and to share information about what they love about working at your organization, and they say we don't want to or we have nothing good to say, start there, fix that, and say, all right, what can we change? Ask for feedback. Again, this comes back to data, and the more data you have, the better decisions you can make. Find out what's wrong and work to fix it, and then once it's fixed, and that can be something as simple as our desks are really smushed together in this corner. Why don't we spread them out? And maybe you rearrange the office a little bit and people feel more calm and comfortable at their desks. Really find out what's going on at your organization specifically, work to fix it, and see and make sure employees understand how hard you're working for that, and I bet you'll start to see a change in perception.
And I would add, this is Colleen, I would just add that I do encounter people who don't want to be employee brand advocates. And sometimes I do encourage them to think about posting on LinkedIn specifically, or maybe LinkedIn only, because they are, it's a professional channel and it's work-related, and that might be the only place that they feel comfortable talking about work topics. And they don't have an interest in being on Twitter, and they don't have an Instagram account. They're maybe not engaged in those other channels in their personal life anyway, so asking them to take on those channels to just be an employee brand advocate is a big ask, and sometimes people aren't engaged in that way. So my recommendation around that is start with LinkedIn, and then do your best to demonstrate the kind of windfall that they can experience as building their personal brand. So really building your personal brand and your personal expertise around a topic can be really fun and engaging, and I've found that people who kind of balk at the idea of being a brand advocate think that it's all about being like a brand sycophant. They think it's all about just talking about how great this one place is and how it's the best place. Well, you're not asking them to do that. You're not asking them to misrepresent their opinion. You're asking them to talk about things that inspire them and that they find engaging, and whether that's about the outing that they went on with their colleagues, or it's about the project that they delivered, or about the flowers that were left on their desk for their birthday. It doesn't matter, and it might just be that they're really going to start over here talking about technical aspects of Java, and that's all they want to talk about. Well, that's fine. I think talking about building your professional brand is a big education piece for them. And then if and when they want to come over and share some of that thought leadership content by posting it on your website or posting it on LinkedIn Pulse, and then your brand can drive back to them, they'll see how fun it is and how engaging it is to have this higher level of credibility and association with your brand. And so I think it's kind of a I scratch your back, you scratch mine conversation, and it's also like really reassuring people. I'm not asking you to misrepresent your opinion. I'm not asking you to be a opinionless, person who just cheers for the company and doesn't do anything else. In fact, quite the opposite. I want you to be authentic. I want to share content that inspires you, that you think will engage your network. And sometimes that really lights people up. Oh, yeah, I'm interested then. And sometimes people go, yeah, still, I'm never going to do it. Well, okay, that is maybe someone that you'd want to not spend all of your time and energy on, because you're never going to win 100% of your company. Even at the best company, you're just not.
Great, thank you. We have another question. Can you speak about the brand advocacy tool?
Sure. And there are quite a few of these in the marketplace, so I don't want to be walking advertisement for Dynamic Signal, but that's the one that we use. There is another one called Sociable. There is one called, Social. I bet you they wish I could remember their brand name right now. There are quite a few out there. So with Dynamic Signal, we have a web platform, a web app, but we also have native Android and iOS apps. What it does is it brings in content from RSS feeds from partners. We bring in industry Twitter feeds. We have it all kind of tagged. Because we have such a wide employee base with such different interests like healthcare and, we'll say like IT and software development, workplace and HR. We have all these different topics or tagged kind of conversation streams. And when you sign up for the program, as an employee, you log in with your single sign-on, your employee password at that web app level, and that's not required. You don't have to have that level of IT or functionality in your org to do this, but you log in with your password, and then you get to see all this content, and you also get to share links into the tool that you think are compelling. So if you're like, geez, my colleagues who are interested in customer engagement tools will really love this piece that I just read. I'm going to recommend this link in. And then the admins, which we have a group of like higher user admins, myself, my colleagues in my specific org, and then other people in the company, we add some suggested social content. So maybe we'll tweak the summary, the metadata summary that gets pulled, and we'll add a tweet, some Twitter content, and then it gets pushed into the system, and people can go through their feed, a user can go through their feed, consume content that they've indicated that they're interested, so they can bucket themselves into many different industries or areas of interest. They can read it, they can share it to their social channels, they can schedule it to be shared in the future, they can edit the suggested share content, or they can post it as is. So it's a really powerful consume and share platform. There is also some functionality around internal messaging that is not shareable, but it's just kind of like a public service announcement internal to that tool. There's functionality around force notifications to phones. There's a great like suite of functions that tools such as these have.
And we have one more question. Can you share your best success story and how to craft compelling content?
That's a tough one. Lisa, do you want to start?
Sure. Let's see. Best success story. Here's one. OpenTable is a company that maybe you're familiar with. It makes it easy for people to make restaurant reservations. And something like OpenTable has a kitchen where people make their breakfast in the morning, and there happens to be a waffle iron there. And something that started happening authentically at the organization was people started making waffles for each other on Wednesdays, and they started calling it Waffle Wednesdays. So if you're going over to make a waffle, you make one for you make one for your coworker who you sit next to. And what a friendly thing to do in the workplace, right? That's just a nice thing to do that employees were doing for each other. But what leadership found, and what a very smart person in the social realm found, was that let's throw $100 at this and make sure there's extra batter and make sure there's some fun waffle toppings. And on Wednesdays, those things will just show up in the kitchen and really encourage people to go nuts. And importantly, let's capture that on social media. So they took something that was already happening authentically at their company that was actually a really cool, great thing that employees just wanted to do for each other. They threw barely any money at it, to encourage more of it. And then they captured it and they shared it across social media. So it was really authentic because it wasn't something that someone designed from the get-go. They just found something that was good, something that was working, and blasted it out there. And what a cool thing to see as a prospective employee going in for your interview, to be able to say, oh, I saw on Twitter that you guys do Waffle Wednesday. I love waffles. What a great, easy introduction for anyone to kind of to resonate with anyone.
I absolutely agree, Lisa. That's a great example, and I think we should just end it on that one. That's a great story.